Hello and welcome everyone. This is going to be another video in my Procreate for Beginners series. In this video we're going to talk about brushes a little more in depth. If this is the first video in this series that you are discovering, I have a few more that I've made already and there are a lot more coming after this. And all of them are going to be in my playlist, which is named Procreate and Digital Art on my channel. Like I said, I have a lot more coming. This is the brushes video. I've already done a video on the gestures that you can use for Procreate, and I also have an intro video that kind of goes over a basic overview of everything. So if you are an absolute beginner, you should start at the intro video because there's lots of good information there, and then go through these smaller videos that I'm doing the deep dive on. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so today we are going to go deep dive on the brushes in Procreate. So I went over some of this in my intro video, but in case you haven't seen that, we're dealing with these three brushes here on the interface, or three buttons I should say. This one is your paintbrush, the one that looks like a paintbrush. The one that looks like a little finger is your smudge brush, and the one that looks like an eraser is the eraser brush or eraser tool. So those are the ones we're going to look at today. And right now the paintbrush is selected because it's blue. So you can see you can select either of or all three of these, any of the three. But if you hit it, if it's not the one that's selected, you have to hit it twice in order to get this to come up, this brush library thing. But if it's already the one that's selected, you only have to hit it once. So let me show you what all of them do. Well, first of all, let me show you when you hit and you get the brush library for a paintbrush. This thing here will give you all the ones you recently used. Then these next three with the little swoosh here, the Procreate logo swoosh that's in there. I guess it's not a swoosh. Don't sue me, Nike. These three with the little thing, the logo that's part of Procreate, that thing. Those indicate that those are ones that I actually created myself. And I'll just show you. Like these brushes also have the little swoosh here on the right. That means it's something that you've created yourself. It's not something that's in Procreate. So that we're not going to do in this video. We're going to talk about making your own brushes more in another separate video coming later. But just to show you, so that's why there's these three. You won't have these when you open up your version of Procreate. You won't have these three things here. And also, if you were to like buy brushes from someone else that makes brushes, theirs would come up like this as well. They won't have a little logo like these do. Like this is a little pencil tip, little pen nib kind of things. They're going to have the little, the Procreate logo paint mark. I don't know what to call it, but you won't have that in your library, if that makes sense. So anyway, the ones you will have in your library are all of these down here: sketching, inking, drawing, painting, artistic, calligraphy, airbrushing, textures, abstract, charcoals, elements, spray paints, materials, vintage, luminance, industrial, organic, and water. So I'm not going to go through every single brush, but I'm going to kind of go through and show you a couple different things. But first what I want to do is go to calligraphy and then just pick the monoline brush. It's a very simple brush. So I'm just going to draw something real quick, just a little squiggle. So that's painting. So you're taking a color that you have on the color wheel, and that's something we're going to talk about separately. I might pick a few different colors throughout this, but I will explain that more in a different video. And I did explain it kind of in the intro video as well. So if you're not sure how to do anything with that, you may want to look back at the intro video. or wait until my color video comes out. But whatever color you have up here in the top right corner is what will get colored on the screen. So, smudging, so you can just select the smudge with the finger and then hit it again, and you can pull up the brush library again, and you can pick a different brush to smudge with. So this is kind of a smudgy brush to begin with. That's the one I have selected most of the time. But you see, you can kind of smudge it around with that brush. And you can play around with different brushes and how they look. You know, that's up to you. But just to give you an idea, you know, you can smudge like that. And then this is the eraser tool, so we're going to select it. And you can also do the same thing where you hit it again and you can pick an eraser tool. And I have good luck with the airbrush for eraser tool. Depends on what I'm doing. You can also select the same brush as your paintbrush. I'll show you how to do that in a second without having to like search for it. But anyway, I usually use the airbrush, but you can see that now I'm erasing that. And I showed this in my intro video. I'm going to show it again real quickly. So I know if you're not familiar with layers, you should go to the intro video or wait for my layers video that's going to come out. It's coming out soon, I promise. But every time you open a new canvas in Procreate, it's going to come up with one layer here and a background layer on the bottom. And you can turn that off. And that means like there's no, it was white and now there's nothing there. So it's transparent. So what I want to show you is when you erase, you see it's actually erasing the paint stroke. But if you were to, let's put this back on real quickly. And if you were confused about, I know this isn't very common, but if you're confused about like, well, this is a white background, if I want to erase it, then I can just paint with white, right? So going back to the disc here, and I'll explain more about this later, but you can double tap over here to get white and painting with white. So, oh, you think that's erased, right? Because you're painting white on a white canvas. But if you want to do anything transparent with it, it's going to be a problem. Because if you come back here and you turn off the background, you see it's actually, I painted with white on the transparency. I didn't erase. So there's a bit of a difference there. I'm going to undo that with 2 fingers. You don't know what I'm talking about, go to your gesture controls video. But anyway, that's the difference between erasing and painting the same color as the background, because you can change the background color as well. We're going to do that when I talk about color or when I talk about layers. Not today. But I think I did do it in my intro video, possibly. So, anyway, those are what those 3 do. We're going to go a little bit more in depth in a minute on that. There's a couple more things I want to show you. All right, so I erased the layer. And I'm going to go back to the color I had before. Now, one of the things that I also went over in my intro video, over here, in this little slider over here, this is going to change your brush size. So obviously if we're way down at the bottom, this is how small it is. And if we go way on top, this is how big it gets. And you can change that in the Brush Studio. We're going to talk about that. We can talk about it today, actually. I'm going to go in there briefly. But we'll talk more about it in the when I do making your own brushes in the Brush Studio video, which is coming later. But anyway, so for this brush, this is how small it gets and how large it gets. And there's a few other things you can do here. So I did show this with the gestures. So if you take this out and move it down, it goes slower. just in case you're having trouble getting to a certain percentage. But another thing you can do is if you find a percentage that you really like, you can, if you hit it like this, you can hit this little plus sign here and it'll save that size, which is nice because this used to not be a thing on Procreate. It's a relatively newer thing that they did. And it was very annoying when you would kind of change different things around working on something. You'd have to kind of remember, oh yeah, my brush was, 49% at that point. But now you can put these little markers here. Like, oh, this is good for this. And this you can do up to 5 times per brush. So let me show you what I mean. So let's switch to a different brush real quick. We'll just pick this chalk one here. You see that's a different brush. And the markers went away. So if you go down, let's say, oh, I really like that size, plus, and you can also do it, I didn't say this, but you can also do this with the opacity. So that's what this slider is for, is the opacity, which means, so having your opacity at 100% means that it's a little harder with the chalk, but in this monoline brush, it's completely opaque. There's no transparency to it at all. And bringing the opacity down, I'll show you with the chalk since that's what we have. So this is completely opaque, and this is transparent. You're not going to see anything. But if you bring it back up a little, you can see it's very faint. So you can change it over here. And if you find, again, an opacity that you want, you can do another marker. And then if you get away from it, you can just kind of click near it and it'll take you there. Now, if you want to take the markers off, you can just hit this negative here. And then pick a different spot in plus if you want, or just take it off. So the other thing I wanted to show you is now that was saved under this chalk brush. Now if we go back to the monoline, it still has our markers from what we saved before on the monoline. So it'll save it for that brush until you change it. So again, you can negative it and then go to your positive again, or you can just get rid of all of them. So that's how you do that. Now, let me erase all this. I just want to show another thing. So I said you can quickly change to like the eraser tool from the paintbrush, and you can have the same exact brush if you hold down. So if you hit the eraser here and you hold it down, it'll change it. See, it said erase with current brush up there. And you can erase with the current brush. The same exact brush, so you can get the stroke off exactly, a little more exactly. You can do the same with the smudge. Again, this is something you can play around with when you're painting whatever you want to paint. Creating whatever you want to create. But anyway, that's how you do that. Alright, so another thing I want to show you, if you're painting with a brush and you really like it, and you want to make sure that you remember where it is, or you want to keep the same brush that you use often, first of all, like I said before, this recent will show you the most recent ones you used. But if you come in here, and this is the brush we were using, if you slide to the right, you can pin this, and it will always be in your recents. So it'll be easy to find. So you don't have to keep going look for it. Oh, I'll just go to my recent and I'll find it. So you can pin it, but you can also, if you saw, you can take another brush and you can clear it let's say you don't want it in there, you didn't mean to hit it, and it's kind of distracting you, you can just take it out. You can also clear this, your pinned one, so that would be like unpinning it. But you can also unpin it. And also, if you clear it from your recent here, it's not gonna like clear it from the original place it was, because this one was an airbrush. So you don't have to worry about losing it. Like, that doesn't delete the brush. But that we're just talking about in the recent menu now. So let's go to one of these. So it's going to be a little different now. If we swipe to the left, you see there's share, duplicate, and then there's reset, which you can't actually do anything with. It's not something I can click right now. I can show you what that will do in a minute. Sharing is if you want to share the brush. That would probably be more of something you make custom. So you'd be able to share that, and you can take it, wherever you want to take it. But you can also duplicate a brush. And you see that when you do it, it comes up with peppermint 1 instead of peppermint. And it's got this little, what do I want to call that? Paint blob, I guess, paint stroke. Which means it's like a custom brush again. So sometimes if you're making a custom brush, you can start with the parameters of a brush that's already in the library. And you can also do a new one. And we're going to talk about that again when we talk about the brush studio. So we're not really going to go into that very much this time. I'm just going to show you a little bit. So if you're going to mess around with the settings of a brush, I would say you should duplicate it first, because then you can have one that's normal and the way it's supposed to be. And this one you can mess with, if that makes sense. So that's actually what you used to have to do, because they didn't have that button that says reset. They didn't have that, but now they do. So it makes it a lot easier. But before, like if you were to go into Brush Studio, which we're going to do in a minute, and change things, you would have to you would have to remember where things were. So you could change it back to normal if you wanted a normal version, or you would have to duplicate it like this to make sure that you didn't mess with the original one. But now they have a reset button, and you can do that when you make your own custom brushes as well. You can make a reset point when you make a brush, so that if you were to ever to mess it up too much, you would be able to reset to the original way it was. So, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute here. So I duplicated this brush, so it's peppermint 1. Now, after I did that, I can click on it like this, and it'll come up with this Brush Studio, which again, we're going to talk about in depth in another video. But there are a couple things I want to show you. One of them is under stabilization, streamline. I don't know if this is easy to talk about. If you bring it up, like, it makes it a little more like smooth, and like this is kind of more irregular. Like if you're kind of jittery when you're moving your pencil around, it will be more realistic as to what it would look like if you were actually, drawing something like that. But if you put it up higher, it kind of smooths it out for you and makes it a little more professional looking, I guess. So that is something, if you're having trouble with drawing on an iPad, you may want to increase your streamline a little bit. So that's under stabilization, streamline, and amount. Now the rest of this gets a little more complicated, and we're going to go through that later. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but that's something that comes up a lot. And then let's see, what else can I show you real quick? So this here, maximum size and minimum size under properties, brush behavior. This is kind of how We were talking before how the monoline only goes up to that certain amount. We're on the chalk pencil right now, but or, no, we're not. We're in the peppermint pencil, pen, brush, whatever. But this, when I said, like when you put it up to 100%, this is how big it gets. You can actually make that bigger. So, like this is at 9% here. I'm just going to show you. Actually, let me go out real quick. So, let me undo that. We're on peppermint 1. This is the biggest that it gets right now. It's on 100% up. So then let's go back to here and change this maximum size. Let's do 80. Now that 100% is a lot bigger, isn't it? So that's something, if you want it to be bigger, you can make it bigger through there. And that again was under Brush Studio Properties, Brush Behavior, Maximum Size. And you can do the minimum as well, and you can do opacity as well. Again, I'm going to go over all of this stuff in depth when we talk about making our own brushes. But that is something I mentioned before and that I would like to show you. And then one more thing. So this is, again, I duplicated the peppermint brush. So it's peppermint 1. You see, I can actually name it up here or something else if I wanted to. And then we're going to talk more about this in the Brush Studio, but you can put your name in here, like, oh, I created this brush, and it tells you when it's created. That time is not right. Nor is the date. Oh, it must be when the peppermint brush was made. I'm like, that's not right. But anyway, you can also put your signature here, you know. That's not really my signature. I just kind of scribbled. But you can put it here to, like, you know, try to prevent people from selling your brush that you made. But the other thing you can do is you can create the new reset point. So, let me take this down. Yes. So, again, let's say we were duplicating this brush and making a different version. This is where it would reset to. So, let me show you what that means. If you were to go back in here and make another change, let's change back in here. Let's change the size again down. Or was it 9 before? And then hit done. So you see now going back here, you can reset the brush to where it was here. And now it put it back at the 80% rather than 9, because that was our reset point. So that's what that does. Now you see you have the delete option. Because you created this brush, you can't delete the ones that are already on here. That's why reset comes up instead of delete on these. So you can delete this. But let me show you. So if we go into the regular peppermint and we change something, let's do the size again. So you see, you know, it didn't have the same thing. It's made by Procreate. This is a Procreate brush. One of the ways you can reset is to reset all settings here. And it'll take you back to the point. So you go back and see, oh yeah, it's back down to 9. Let's put it back to 80 one more time. Go to done. And then if you click here, you swipe it left again, you can hit reset here as well. So it'll reset it back to the 9% again. So, see. So basically you can't ruin any of the brushes that are on Procreate anymore. You used to be able to like permanently ruin them. But that's something they changed. So that was nice. And like I said, you can always duplicate it and then ruin it any way you want. And you won't have to worry about resetting it. But we'll talk more about all of that in our Brush Studio video, so that's pretty much it for brushes. Alright, let's do a little recap. So the 3 buttons we're mainly working with today are the paintbrush button, which is the paintbrush, the finger button, which is the smudge brush, and the eraser button, which is the eraser brush or eraser tool. You can choose which of those 3 tools you want to use by tapping it with the pencil or your finger. When it is selected, it is highlighted in blue. When you tap one of those tools again when it's already selected, it'll bring up the brush library for that tool. Once in the brush library, you can choose a brush for the tool you want to use from the preloaded Procreate brushes, or you can select one from the ones you've created or the ones you've uploaded. The recent category of brushes includes all the brushes you've recently used. Using the slider that's on the interface, you can change the brush size with the top slider or the brush opacity with the bottom slider. To make a finer adjustment to either the size or opacity, you can drag your pencil out from the slider horizontally and then drag it vertically to scroll through the percentages. To save a brush size or opacity that you'd like to keep using, you can tap the slider button and then tap the plus sign in the top right corner. You can save 5 total marks on both of those sliders together for each of the brushes, and it will save until you remove them yourself. To remove a mark, tap on that slider button again and now tap the minus sign that is now in the top right corner. To quickly choose the same brush type that you were using for one tool on a different tool, tap and hold down on the new tool button. You can pin a favorite brush to your recent menu by selecting that brush, dragging it to the left, and then hitting the pin button. You can slide the brush to the left again to unpin or clear the brush from the recent category of brushes. Don't worry, this won't delete the brush altogether. It'll still be where it normally is in its original category in the brush library. Sliding a brush to the left in one of the preloaded categories will give you different options. You can either share, duplicate, or reset. The share option will allow you to export the brush and share however you would like. The duplicate option will allow you to copy the brush and make changes to the copy while keeping the original intact. After you've gone into the Brush Studio and made some changes to a brush, you can then use the reset option to reset the brush to its original settings. The option to reset is also available in the Brush Studio itself under the About This Brush category. Under the Stabilization category in the Brush Studio, slide the slider for the amount under Streamline to the right to make your strokes more smooth or streamlined. To increase the maximum size a brush can have, go to Properties in the Brush Studio, then to Brush Behavior, and then Maximum Size. You can also do this with minimum size, maximum opacity, and minimum opacity. Stay tuned for more Procreate deep dives on this channel, including selections, layers and masks, a closer look at the Brush Studio, color, the adjustments menu, animations, and more. Also, we will eventually be doing project-based videos that go over all of these things together in a practical way. But that's all for today, so thank you for watching. If you're interested in any of these categories coming up or the project-based stuff we're doing later, please subscribe so you don't miss anything. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.